Hello and welcome to episode 60 of the Game Plan podcast by College Baseball Advisors. On the Game Plan, we talk about everything related to high school, college, minor league, pro baseball with coaches, players, talking development, the journey that people have taken, the recruiting process, overall development. I think you'll really enjoy the podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Mazzoni. My background is 30 years as a college baseball coach. Currently, I'm the owner of collegebaseballadvisors.com. For more information about what I do, the recruiting process, to schedule a no obligation, no cost Zoom where we talk out your particular situation, or just to see all past episodes of the Game Plan podcast, please visit collegebaseballadvisor.com. On today's episode, we have Ty Blankmeyer. Ty is the assistant coach at Vanderbilt. Really cool background, probably the best lineage, if you will, of anyone we've had on here. His grandfather, coached Mike Shepard, coached a longtime legendary coach at Seton Hall, and his dad, Ed Blankmeyer, a longtime legendary coach at St. John's, which is where Ty played, was then drafted after his career. Then started as a scout. So a really interesting background. First went into scouting before he got into coaching. His first coaching job was at Wake Forest. He then obviously did a great job there, went to Duke, and now he's, of course, at Vanderbilt. So we talked everything about his journey growing up, in his particular family. Talked about, of course, recruiting and coaching, particularly to Vanderbilt. So I think you'll really enjoy this podcast. I'd like to remind you this podcast is made possible through the sponsorship of the Mohegan Sun World Baseball Coaches Convention, which is in its 23rd year. This year is January 15th to 17th. 2026 at the Mohegan Sun Casino in Connecticut. Ty Blankmeyer is a past speaker of the event. It's just an awesome environment to listen to great baseball people, to have great baseball conversations in a great venue with vendors and a cage demo and an infield demo. It's just an awesome event. So please, for more information and to register, visit baseballcoachesclinic.com. And without further delay, here is my conversation with Ty Blankmeyer, assistant coach from Vanderbilt. All right, Ty. So I'm very excited. I really like to use this as like getting to know you better. I mean, you and I know each other a little bit, but certainly not as well as we'll know each other at the end of this Zoom here. Um, I'm not very bright. I'll start off with that. So I always knew that your dad's father-in-law was Coach Shepard. And then all of a sudden, as I'm doing some research and I'm looking at your bio, I'm like, holy mackerel, that means that's his grandfather, right? So
Hmm.
will say this, I probably have not done one of these Zooms where somebody has a grandfather and a father that are in the same exact profession that, you're in. So I guess I'll ask you this as the first question. When did you realize as a kid, wow, this is what my family does? They coach college baseball.
Uh, Preschool, kindergarten. It's funny, Wayne, when when I was in kindergarten, you know how like you have prompts of like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody has these visions of grandeur and all these things, and it's really healthy. And um, mine was actually to be a college baseball coach. It's always what I wanted to do, but just because I saw my two biggest heroes in life do it, and I'm just fortunate I was able to fall into their following their paths and be able to live my dream.
I mean, that is pretty cool where like you knew it early on, and here, however many years later, you are exactly doing it. There's not a lot of people in the world that know what they want to do young and then actually go ahead and get into it and do it. So that's
Hmm.
that's really cool. So obviously baseball, which is what we're going to talk about this whole time, was a huge part of all of your life being with baseball people. Did you also play other sports? Were you doing other sports formally or informally, or were you locked into baseball almost all the time?
I played other sports up until like my sophomore year of high school. In high school, I chose to go to Seton Hall Prep, where actually my other uncle coached and has a legendary career and program at Seton Hall Prep, the best, probably the best baseball program in the Northeast. And I just wanted to go there. I saw him and what he was able to accomplish, have a lot of good players and develop a lot of good players there. So I wanted to go there. But with that being said, the school was very good at other sports, and as a 5'8", kind of smaller stature guy, realized that, man, maybe I wasn't good enough to play football, or I was not a good enough shooter to play basketball, whatever it might be. So I just stuck with baseball. But, my advice from my father obviously was always to play them all. And, I think if I had one regret, and my one regret would be that I didn't play, all at least football till I was a senior in high school. I think, having that versatility, that competitive diversity is really important in every kid and athletes today. So, but with that being said, I played, three, four sports a year till I was, until eighth grade. So, um, but once sophomore year came around, I was just baseball. I wanted to get bigger and stronger, and yeah, I did, but there is a little part of me looking back that I wish I continued to play football and basketball, whatever.
I definitely want to unpack a little because now in my position of advising people on recruiting, I can't tell you how many kids either give up another sport or ask if they should give up another sport. And I don't envy the position they're in because
Mm.
I'm 56. Back when I played, no one ever thought of doing that. And conversely, if I played now, I would be pressured to give up another sport to focus on baseball. But over my years of coaching, I have had many kids tell me exactly what you said, that that they don't have a lot of regrets, but that is one that they gave up a sport or didn't try for a sport. Now it's different at Seton Hall Prep. Seton Hall Prep is a powerhouse in all sports, right? So you're talking about going out for football, playing with some, D1 bound kids. It's a different level than if you were at some random public high school and at 5'8", you'd still probably be a star running back. So, right, like you had a different situation, but I am very cognizant of that for kids. I don't envy the position that they're in with being kind of a little bit pressured to do that. But so obviously now you go to St. John's, but was that something that, hey, I'm gonna go play for my dad, no bones about it, or let me see what's out there and see what's the best fit? How did that come about to get to St. John's?
Yeah, I wanted to explore my options first. My mom wanted me to explore my options because I grew up at St. John's. I grew up on the field. I grew up taking the drive with my dad from Morristown to Queens, which is not friendly at times, but um, that's all I really knew. So my mom always wanted me to just make sure I saw other places, and I had a few opportunities to go play at other schools, like schools, really good baseball programs, but when push came to shove, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to be around my dad. And at that time, that was one of the most respected programs in the Northeast, but also the country. So, it was a very attractive situation. And, playing for my dad, having those days with my dad, even when the times weren't great, if, in terms of playing or a team not doing great, I still got to experienced that with my dad, and that was a great bonding experience for me that I still look back to this day.
So I know enough about your career that it was really good and you go on to get drafted. Did you get playing time immediately? Was it awkward at all being the coach's kid, or was it like I don't know if I've talked to anyone in that situation. So
Mm.
was it, hey, this is just I guess I'll just ask you, what was it like at the beginning, at least especially?
Yeah, I think it could be a little bit awkward because I think everyone's trying to fill you out a little bit, make sure, you're just one of the guys. And I think what it taught me, Wayne, was just to really focus on being a good teammate. Because in actuality, that's all they want to know. All your teammates want to know what kind of, do they want you in their foxhole or not? Are you
Right.
gonna, that's it. And once you're just one of the boys, they don't, they didn't treat me any differently. I was just, you know, one of the guys. And I think the challenging thing from a playing standpoint of playing for your father is it's really easy if you are the best player, not even close, or the worst player.
Right.
I was really competing for playing time all the time. So that became a challenge because it was like, man, you really have to create separation from the guy next to you. And for the first few years at St. John's, I was not able to do that. Just wasn't, but I just wanted to win. So like any team role I had, whatever it was, I learned how to be a good teammate, like, and found pride in having different roles to help the team win. And that was the most important part for me. And that's what I learned from it. And I think that was the kind of silver lining with all that is just learning that and appreciating that and having joy from someone else's success. And I think that's something I really needed to learn at that age and that point in my career.
Yeah, that is a good point, right? If you're clearly the best player, no conflicts. If you're the worst guy on the team, you're not going to play a lot unless it's junk time, no conflicts. But right, otherwise, yeah, could be interesting. Um, what who drafted? Was it Cincinnati that drafted you?
Yeah, John Saprini with the Cincinnati Reds. I call him every time I see him, he's still scouting the Northeast. I say he's the best scout in the world. He signed a 36 rounder that ended up being a scout in 2 years. So, but I'm forever grateful. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and so, I don't want to sidetrack us on talking about how much the draft has changed and may
Mhm.
continue to change, but obviously, you get that opportunity. Did I've had many people on this podcast that are like, "Hey, I played minor leagues." It was pretty quick that I realized like I'm probably not going to be a big leaguer. Was that something you realized, or did you not care? Like, I just want to grind it as long as I can. What do you remember back from that time?
It's funny. I think at that point I got into it and I realized when I got drafted, I was like, damn, everything's out of my control. So that's, your sometimes your health is out of your control. I just fractured my hamate. Sometimes the result of the game's out of your control. So in that time, I had two pieces of advice. One was from my grandpa, one was from my dad. My dad said, "Hey, enjoy every second of it because you never know when it's going to end."
Mm.
Um, and then my grandpa was like basically telling me 90% of the players there are there for the 10% to get better. But those 10%, those 90%, somebody can always slip through. So in the back of my mind, that I always thought about that because you're like, I'm not going to get into this, not thinking I could not be a Major League Baseball player, but I really didn't concern myself with. I just concerned myself with, same thing, just controlling what I can and being a good teammate, as ironic and cliche as that sounds. And no matter what it was, I thought I was going to learn something from being in that situation that would help me for my career, whether it was wisdom from a minor league coach or another player that's still playing on TV. So I just kind of took it as like baseball school every day. And, being a baseball guy myself, it was just a really cool experience, just being a sponge and taking a lot out of it from that day. So, I know that doesn't really answer your question, but that's how I approached it every day, to be honest with you. And um, I'm really grateful for the experience.
I mean, it actually does. You did answer, and it does make sense. And it's enlightening to hear that because I have talked with a number of guys who found the minor leagues really difficult and depressing, and like just they went from the team vibe to sort of an everyman for themselves, and you know, but some of course enjoyed it. But obviously, I love what you just said. You kind of treated it as baseball school, like, hey,
Mhm.
there's many other worse things you could be doing in the world than playing minor league baseball. And now obviously we're going to get to your coaching career, which is where you're locked in now. But you did say from early on in your life, you wanted to be a baseball coach. What prompted then the scouting move? Was that just an opportunity? Was that, hey, I'm going to coach someday, but this is a good way to get an introduction? What led to you starting off that way after playing?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's one of the most common things I get when I talk to coaches or aspiring coaches and kids that want to become coaches, whether professionally, high school, or college, whatever it might be. And um, when I was released from the Cincinnati Reds, they retained me as a minor league coach, but like I worked in player development and basically it was a baseball internship again. So I was just another sponge at that time. But um, I had a friend who became an agent and he kind of connected me with the Milwaukee Brewers in the Northeast. And and what happened was is they needed just time and they needed a Northeast area scout. Hadn't thought a ton about being an area scout or a scout in general. I did notice them at the games when I played at St. John's, but what I'd tell when I presented that to my dad thought it was a really bright idea because he was like, regardless of what you want to do in this game, whether you want to be a front office guy or an agent or a coach or whatever it might be, evaluation is probably the most important skill you
Mm.
can acquire just because if you want to be a coach, you always said it, you got to get good players.
Yeah.
And you have to understand the recruiting process and evaluating process and projecting on the right guys. So he always felt strongly about that. So that's, to be honest, that was probably the influence that I needed to get into it. Um, and it was unique. It's not something I ever really thought about doing, but I enjoyed it and I made some really good relationships doing it. And the idea of the whole thing was if you want to be a good coach, you got to get good players. So you have to have experience learning about good players. And that's really why I took the job, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest with you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's
so that,
interesting. I've always found scouting to be really hard work. And I say that because I found if I was around my team all the time, I could tell you who had a legit shot and who didn't. And if I watched an opponent enough, I could tell you who had a legit shot and who didn't. But I would find it hard from the outside looking into because boy, someone could look really bad. I mean, just take Otani, right? Let's face it, he's the best player on the planet. And if he faces a certain left-hander, he looks like it's his first at bat in his life, like he can't hit a baseball with his butt flailing it, and then he'll hit two bombs and then, strike out eight on the mound. So it's a very hard sport, and you could look really good and really bad. So I always found scouting would be really hard to get a small sample look. But I guess ultimately, if you're good at the job, you are developing relationships and you're finding out not only can this kid play, what's the work ethic, the character, all that stuff. Was
no
that,
doubt.
yeah, so that was a big part of the job for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, work ethic, character, makeup, however you want to define those terms. I think everybody defines it slightly different. Um, because I think that's kind of the under the hood elements that help help you figure out who's gonna be able to reach their potential. So, all that stuff is good, and obviously there's a lot of information nowadays, and being able to balance that with it as well, and you can make a pretty good educated guess.
Yeah, and I guess when it all comes down to it, baseball or all sports, it's still a human endeavor, and whatever you think doesn't always pan out. Often it can, but right, we all know the stories of high draft picks in all sports that didn't make it and lowers that did, and it's just a really competitive thing. And just like your grandfather said, it's what percent of minor leaguers, first of all, make it to the big leagues? It's probably 10%. So this is a really difficult thing to do. But back to your career now, after scouting with the Brewers, you now get into college coaching and you take the position at Wake. Was that, hey, I'm ready to enter this now, or did that come about through a connection? Like what inspired that move from scouting to the first coaching gig?
I was just hungry for it. That's the first thing. I was really hungry for it. I just wanted to get into it, and I knew it'd probably have to be a volunteer position at the time, which they don't have anymore,
They
but
don't. It's changed.
they had it at, in that level. And the college pitching coach at St. John's when I was there, Corey Mascara went hired to be the pitching coach at um, Wake Forest, and they had an opening because the volunteer at Wake Forest, Joey Hammond, became the head coach at High Point. And so he was like, "Hey man, like, which is this something you'd want to do?" And I got to talk to Coach Walter and Bill Salento, and there was no doubt in my mind it's what I wanted to do because it was a great institution around good people, but also it was a chance to live out my dream. And to this day, it was looking back, 5 years ago, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah, it is something I'm laughing about personally, and this is the way life goes. But you'll have to ask your dad about this one day. He offered me his pitching coach job. I was thinking about what year it was, but it paid very little, and I forget what job I was in or took or whatnot. But like let's see. Scott Brown, that worked out pretty well for Scott, who you're coaching with now at Vandy, right? Corey Mascara, that worked out pretty good. He's the head coach at Duke now. Now, I'm not saying I'm of that level, but certainly going through St. John's is a heck of a way to get your coaching career rolling, no question about it. So you're at Wake. You were there 2 seasons or one? How many?
One season.
1 season, and then now you get the position at Duke. So which is interesting because I don't want to talk about specific names, but I started to deal with you then when I started to do this recruiting job with a couple of
Mhm.
kids that committed there that are now on your way to you over at Vanderbilt. But was coaching at Duke basically the same operation in terms of coaching at Wake, but now you're in a paid position? Just in other words, I'm saying like were your responsibilities different going from Wake to Duke, or was it just, hey, I'm taking this job, I'm leaving Wake to go to Duke because I'm no longer the volunteer, I can get a paid position?
Yeah, I would say I think the responsibilities became more recruiting heavy. Um, at Wake, I was just uh, basically a baseball rat with the guys, just
Right.
doing whatever I could, whatever Billy needed me to do, whatever he gave me keys to the defense, and I ran that, and that was really cool for me. And so it's just really baseball, and I helped out with um, the recruiting a little bit because I had a scouting background, so they trust me to help out a little bit and um, dig into some of my connections. But um, I got hired to Duke basically to be the recruiting coordinator and do the same job I did at Wake Forest on the field. But it was, obviously it was no longer a volunteer and became the recruiting coordinator there. So it was a really fun jump for me, and I thought it was the right one to make.
It's interesting because I had not known at all Coach Pollard. Got to know him a little bit through that recruiting experience. And then, I don't know, a month ago, I had him on this podcast, and I had this impression, not knowing that this was going to be like, he was going to be like a drill sergeant army guy. Like, he was just a cool guy, man, like inspiring, motivational. What was it like, working with him at Duke?
It was awesome. I mean, he's one of my outside of my, my my dad, my grandpa. He's one of the biggest mentors in my life. Looking back, I mean, I just a really honest person, and he wouldn't do anything that he wouldn't expect anybody else to do. Like, so he's very he holds you accountable, but also he holds himself up to a high standard. So he's just an awesome person to be around, and um, he's hired awesome people, and he has an awesome family. So really grateful for that experience, being around him and learning a lot from him.
You were there. What were the years that you were there? You were there from
23, well, it's 22 fall to 24. So
okay,
2 seasons.
so 2 seasons there. Okay, and then obviously now you're really entering second year at Vanderbilt. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. Um, was the, obviously Vanderbilt. I mean, I think the common people would say the elite program in the United States for college baseball is Vanderbilt. Obviously, at the top, it's very competitive, but over the last however many years, Vanderbilt is become Coach Corbin has built, let's put it that. And people remind me all the time, and Pollard reminded me like the Vanderbilt we all know is not the Vanderbilt that he started. So he's done a tremendous job building it into this program. Um, what's it been like being at Vanderbilt with him? Is it again, similar in terms of the other institutions that you've been to, or is being at Vandy bring a different cachet to it or a different, role in the job at all?
I mean, there is some elements to every program that's a little bit different, that you like a lot. And I think the cool thing is it's another great institution that when you recruit kids, it's you're presenting a degree that can change the course of their life. Um, and it is cool because a lot of things you learn here, or I've learned as a coach, is um, you can apply it to your life. So there's life skills that he really tries to focus on in the classroom setting, and I think that's probably coolest thing about Vanderbilt. It's like, yeah, you're learning ball. I get, and it's really special, but you're also learning just leadership and life schools on a day-to-day basis that he really tries to emphasize and focus on. And I think that's the unique thing here. Because as just as much baseball development as it is here, and it's premier, it's also the human skills and the human development and leadership. And it sounds cliche, but that's I think the most powerful thing that is done here. And that's kind of what I've enjoyed being around the most, and just learning about yourself. So I think that's really unique because I think when you're talking to 18 to 22-year-old kids, there's lessons that they learn on a day-to-day basis that it's probably the best time in their life where they can hear something like this and they can bring it on and 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 carry it on with them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't matter what the level is of baseball, whether you're at the highest level like Vanderbilt or some other program. Obviously, you have a lot of guys that their goal is to play after college and their goal is to play in the big leagues. But the reality is most won't, as we just talked about earlier. So your job as a coach is to develop good human beings, and baseball is the vehicle by which you guys do that. So I think coaches are mentors. They're maybe more impactful than anyone else, certainly on a college campus. I know professors are important, but you spend a lot of time around these guys and really, influence tremendously. I do want to talk some recruiting stuff, but I want to cover one thing with you specifically, coaching wise. You may have been asked this many times or not at all. Does Ty Blankmeyer have a coaching style? Um, Whether it's in the way you organize things, the way you motivate guys, the way you teach things. Do you do anything that over your lifetime of great baseball experience that you do that is, hey, this is the way I'm running these drills, this cage session, this infield session? Is there anything that you do specific to you?
I think it's ever evolving. I think just being around great coaches, like you always try to learn from them too, and I've been lucky to do that. Um, I think for me is the biggest thing that I try to is develop really good relationships with the players to know that, they know I care about them, but also like feel them out in terms of what they need that day. Do they need a little kick in the ass, or do they need, to be their arm be put around them? I just want them to feel like I'm in their foxhole at the end of the day. So I don't know if there's a specific coaching style. I think it's going to adapt from, as you grow wisdom in this game. But I think the easy term would be a player's coach. I feel like I am, but at the same time, I'm Ty Blankmeyer, whatever that is. I don't know, but I would say I just try to really develop a good relationship with the players and get them what they need that day, meet them where they're at.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I was thinking about like if someone asked me that question back in my day of coaching, and I always expected the players to want to do their best individually and as a team, and most of the time they would give the effort required, but like sometimes they wouldn't for whatever reason, and then I would just go crazy. Like I would just blow my top or throw them out of practice or like, but I would imagine most of the time these guys, especially at your level, it's competitive and they want it. So I'm assuming not so often do you have to say, hey, we need a better effort. But I'm sure there are times they're human beings also, whether they've got tests or fight with the girlfriend or didn't sleep well or something's going on. I'm sure there's times they need some tough love too, right?
No doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt. I mean, they're they're the very formidable years of their life, so it's cool. So there's a lot of pieces going on that day, and you could kind of read them sometimes and vibe it out.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk recruiting and just a couple of things. I'm sure you're asked about it so much. I want this to be fun for you and I don't want it to be boring. But I always felt coaching overwhelmed with recruiting, if I'm being honest. And what do I mean by that? I mean by like, man, there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of tournaments, there's a lot of people reaching out. It's like chaotic to know who, once you see a player, that's not so hard to tell if they're good. And then secondly, the act of actually being on the phone and bringing them in to recruit is not all that difficult. But I felt overwhelmed almost with the numbers of players. So I want to ask you this question, whether it was at Wake, Duke, or Vandy, how do you go about like organizing the chaos of because you could go anywhere in this country or even abroad and say Vanderbilt baseball. Everyone knows who you are, Duke, Wake Forest. How do you guys go about shrinking this list down to players that are good enough to get to that next level of evaluating them and offering? So I guess that first question is, how do you sort through the numbers and all the chaos in recruiting?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, so I think of it like, and this is just the only thing I knew when I got into this was now with the new rules of you can start talking to a player August 1st of before their junior year. I think it almost like creating history as a scout, right?
Mm.
You think about it, Wayne, when scouting the North, being in the Northeast when I was scouting, it's like you have the scout day. You actually have the summer before if they were playing the NECBL or the Cape Cod. Then you have the scout day. Then you can watch them through the spring and you can kind of gauge where they're going to be at. So I like to phrase that first. So you're starting a list and you're kind of scouting them, evaluating them with one eye, whether it's at future games or WWBA or whatever event that your staff or our staff feels good to go to. And then you really just try to get on the phone with the coaches and say, who are the guys we need to bear down on? Who are the Vanderbilt guys or who are the players that have talent? And you create a huge list, a bigger list, and you get it to a point, when through the calendar year, you get it to a point you're like, all right, I feel pretty good about this list. Um, and then you go even a step further. Now you might have, it might start out with 200 kids on your list, and now you go to 80 kids, and you call them all on August 1st, and you vibe it out on the phone. You ask the questions that is important to Vanderbilt in terms of what makes a guy a Vanderbilt fit. And, I think there's a lot of ways to look at that. And then you kind of sculpt it down even more. Who are the guys we want to have on a visit? And you get to know them even more. So, I think it is chaos, and there's a time I know exactly what you're talking about because Brownie talked about that a couple weeks ago. Of like, the thing about this process is there's chaos, but then all of a sudden you get to the other side of it, and working hard at developing relationships with coaches and players like you figure out who you need to get. And at the end of the day, my mom used to tell me this when I first got into this. She was like, these kids know where they want to go. You're really just presenting an opportunity of what it looks like at their school and what their life could look like when they go there. So I think it's just hard work, like just the hard work is the evaluating and being out there. But then as you develop your list, it starts to work itself out just through time and conversation and learning about people. And I think from there you can really that's where you start to shrink it.
So let me ask kind of the same question, but in a little different way to get one specific, because that all made complete sense. But for example, in the 28 class, there might be 25,000 kids in this country who would love to be part of your 28 class. Okay. Let's not talk about whether they got the grades and talent to do it because that list will shrink down. And ultimately, that's what's going to get to your 200. Hey, these kids are in the ballpark of our academics and our talent level. Now we got to go deeper and find out who is Vanderbilt guys and we want to make this part of this class. But there must be so much. You must get 10 million emails, you guys. You must get a bazillion tournaments and events and different things. So I guess my question would be, what does someone have to do, or what do you guys do to get this kid in the 28 class who's in Missouri? He's an unknown. You've never heard of him. How is he going to get to that 200 list for the 28 class for you guys? Is it through one of his coaches, through seeing him at an event, coming to your own camp, a combo of things?
Yeah, so first of all, when I said 200, it's kind of just a vague number.
I
Like
get it. Totally
yeah.
get vague. No, yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a number of things. I think camp is really important here. Coach Corbin does an unbelievable job with these camps. Like they're elite. It's something I've never like really seen and see. It's impressive just to witness. But the camps are a good way for any school, honestly.
Correct. Yep.
And I think it's like you think, oh, they're this, they're that. But if you want to get in front of coaches and get to know them, handshake, especially when the rules are the way they are right now, yeah, I strongly recommend. I think that's honestly the best thing you can do.
I would agree.
And then from there, number two. Obviously getting yourself involved with the right people, people like yourself that can call a coach and say, hey, we got a guy um, that projects as a Vanderbilt fit or whatever school. That way you have a selected, trusted resource that you can bank on, but that can easily pick up the phone and make calls. But also what it does is get you on their radar. And then once you're on their radar, it's up to them,
Right.
but I think that's an important resource for you. Um, and then ultimately put yourselves in the right situation to be seen. I think that's the last piece of all this. And once you're there, that's kind of how it happens. And a lot of it's luck of the draw sometimes, we're
Yeah.
we're we're human beings. Like we're not gonna be able to see every single player in the country regardless.
Not
But
possible.
we have to use our resources, whether our resources camp, whether our resources are relationships, whether our resources going to the right tournaments. So like we have to use those, and that's what we try to do.
So I want to unpack two things there. First, I don't need to tell you, you just said it, but I deal with so many people that think school prospect camps are a money grab or I'm so tired of hearing the word money grab. It drives me crazy. College baseball teams cannot do tryouts. You can't just pop into Vandy and work out for you on a random Tuesday or jump into practice, which is why there are camps. And at a camp, you get to see the school, see the team, meet all the coaches, meet current players in the team, and very quickly find out whether you can fit there. So I would anyone listening, my God, if you like that school, you got to go to their prospect camp and then get feedback. And ultimately that's important to try to get, and that's part of what I try to do is like kids go to camp and then I get feedback from the coach, even if it's negative. I think even negative feedback is good. If Ty Blankmeyer says to you, hey, listen, you came to our camp. I see a lot of good things, dude. This level is not for you. It's really difficult. You should look at XYZ. That could be so valuable to a kid. And on the other thing I was going to say with that is that's part of what I feel my role is. I would never tell somebody, hey, dude, I can get you recruited to Vanderbilt. What are you kidding me? What I'll say is, hey, I can get feedback from those coaches to tell you what they think. And if they're interested, boom, you guys take it from there. But more than likely, he's going to say, you're not big enough. You don't run enough. You don't throw hard enough. You're a good player, but that's what a lot of kids they don't know where they stack up, Ty. That's the biggest problem. They're good on their high school team and they think, well, maybe I could play it at Duke, and they just don't get enough feedback. So I guess what I'm trying to say is from a player's perspective, the more evaluations you can get, you could get motivated. If imagine you said to a kid, hey, dude, you got almost everything we need at Vanderbilt. You just don't run well enough. And you're saying this to a kid who comes to camp in 10th grade, and now he gets crazy motivated to get faster. Well, you know what? In a year, you might make an offer. But a lot of kids don't know. They think they're fast enough and they just don't get it. So I don't know where I'm going with that. I just get passionate about it because you said
Mhm.
it. Camps are so important and people kind of poo-poo them like, oh, they're just trying to get our money. No, you're running camps to recruit the next class of kids. It's not that confusing, right?
No doubt. No
Yeah.
doubt. I think that's really, really important. Like and anytime you can get candid feedback on your game, like that's huge. And it's also huge just for to learn from and process it because I think a lot of times like kids they get really honest feedback and it discourages them. Well, you have a choice. Is it going to discourage you or is it's going to motivate you? And I think you can't be afraid of it because that's how you get through the other side of it and really know that this is what you want to do.
Yeah. One of the best little snippets of advice came from George Brown, who I'm assuming you know pretty well from St. John's. And he said, having an honest self-evaluation is so absolutely crucial to know what you do well and what you need to
Mhm.
work on. And if you just go, oh, no, no, my curveball's fine, man. Like, I don't care what they say. If you say, listen, I'm a pretty good pitcher, but boy, I got to get my curveball better and I'm going to work on that, then
Mhm.
then you have a chance to actually get yourself better. But all right, I want to go over a couple more things with you. This is one, and I'm assuming this was a part of your game as a player, and I'm curious if this is a skill you like to see at Vanderbilt or the other schools that you've been. I always try to tell kids offensively, if they run well and they're, a middle infielder, a center field guy, a top or a bottom of the lineup guy, base hit bunting could simply set you apart from everybody else. It's not a big piece at the high school game anymore. Summer ball, no one's dropping down base hit bunts that often. It's a dying art in the big leagues. But to me, bunting, base hit bunting is alive and well in college baseball. Am I accurate? Am I not accurate? What's your thoughts on someone having who is a good player with that runs well, having a legitimate base hit bunt skill?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the ultimate thing that is like slump proof, in some words. And also what it does from a defensive standpoint is it shrinks the defense. It
Yep.
condenses the corners on you, and then all of a sudden you start rolling balls in the six hole that are through, and it's like it opens you up a little bit. So if you can run and you can handle the bat, that's a big deal. Just because it actually becomes advantageous to you, and you force the corner infielders to play closer to you. So once you prove you can do it and you do it and it kind of causes some pressure on the defense, yeah, I mean, that's just another tool in your tool set. Like you got to be, if you can do it because it'll put you apart a little bit from a holistic offensive skill set.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's, yes, if you get over the course of a college season, if you get 7 or 8 base hit bunts, hits, but then maybe another 7 or 8 because the corners are drawn in. Now instead of hitting 285, you hit 310. Well, you become a regular. You get your name in the lineup all the time. So yeah, that's something people don't realize. And of course, you're such a good baseball guy. You're right. Of course, the corners are in, shrinks the defense, and you have a much better chance with the
Mhm.
bat. Second thing then is, however much you want to get into it, what's portal life at Vanderbilt? I had Mark Calvi on. I don't know if you know Mark. He's the head coach at South Alabama. Was at South Carolina, won a national championship. He was frustrated when I last talked to him. He was my last guest. For you guys, when I say to Ty Blankmeyer, transfer portal, what is that? How do you interpret that in terms of life every day at Vandy?
Yeah, so what I would tell you is I think there's some tricky parts of the transfer portal and there's some positives to it too. I mean, I call it what it is. I think being able to get yourself into a new situation where you can kind of have different footing and potentially play and get an opportunity sooner or whatever it might be. So, for us specifically, we do the majority of our recruiting through the high school lens, and then from there we kind of spackle holes or whatever it is, and with the portal. So, we're not too portal heavy, but we'll try to find if we get a couple guys at a high school drafts at a high school, we'll try to get a couple portal guys just to balance our roster out and help us compete. But it's the crazy thing is a lot of times these are kids that had visions of going to Vanderbilt, and it's really cool for them. They maybe not have been able to go there out of high school, and they put themselves in a situation as whatever they can get a grad degree at Vanderbilt and come to Vanderbilt. So I think for us it's definitely a piece of what we do, but it's not the kind of the gas that makes the machine run, if that makes sense.
It does totally. But I guess one follow-up to that is it has to be difficult for you guys to not know if you're going to get this high school kid because he may get drafted. And then it could also be difficult on the other side to know whether a current guy is going to get drafted and sign or be back. So I would imagine in some way with the drafting where you're not exactly sure, that's where the portal could come in where, hey, we thought we were having this catcher come in, he signed. Now we need to find a catcher that can come in and help. Maybe the portal's the route to go. Is that accurate to say that the draft is an X factor with the portal?
Yes, that's 100% accurate.
Okay. All right. Last question for you then is, and sometimes I prep people on this, but I figured you'd be ready off the cuff for this one is, Mohegan Sun is a sponsor of the podcast. You've presented at it before. You and I were part of a recruiting panel. It's a really cool event. Any convention is, but Mohegan Sun one being up there is great. So this is a little Mohegan Sun segment. And to that, the question is to a kid watching, this is a sophomore in high school, a junior in high school. He wants to play college baseball desperately, whether it's Vandy or any level. Is there one or two things that you think are, hey, this is what you should be doing, strength or academics or whatever it is that comes to mind that this kid should be making sure he's got in order if he wants to go on and play college baseball?
Yeah, so I you have to start with the classroom. I mean, I wasn't the best student, I'll be the first to admit it, but ironically, I've worked at three really academic institutions, and what I
Yep.
could tell you is when you have good grades, it does separate you in some sense. Even it's not the three schools I worked at, it's some Division III schools that have tremendous programs and have built a great reputation and have degrees that can change the course of your life. And you just give yourself more options if you are, maybe physically short or baseball skills aren't there yet, but you can go to one of these schools and really develop. So I think that always has to be, and it's crazy that I'm even talking like this because I wish if my 15-year-old self heard this, I'd be like confused. But I think the next piece is um, I think the weight room is humongous because not only does it build strength, it builds confidence, and ultimately you build confidence. You become more confident as a human being, but you also become more confident in your game, and it changes your game. So I think that's a big piece of their development at these ages when you start lifting and you really start getting some muscle, you get more confident, and you start acting differently and becoming a better version of yourself and pushing yourself mentally through that lens. So I think those are the two biggest things that they need to focus on right now. I mean, I think it's a great age to start. If you haven't started lifting yet, it's great time to do it.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, I remember the last couple of years watching the College World Series, and what struck me of the teams there is they're just men. There's just this a lot of adult males on the field with physicality and size, and if you say what's the difference between a top 20 program in college baseball and a lower level program? Yeah, there's of course some skill aspect to it, but I think it's just physically the guys is just better athletes or bigger, stronger, run faster. And so you're right. If that's something that I think many kids get that now more than they used to in terms of the lifting piece. And then to the academics, you're right, because I know this. I'm sure at these schools that you've been at, you've seen a player and go, wow, love this dude. Hey, let me get the grades or get a transcript and like, oh, conversation's over. It's not a fun place to be for
Mhm.
anyone when they realize their grades are short. And then in addition, if you have good grades at certain schools, you'll get good academic money for it, which can, if you get a $15,000 academic grant from some school and save your family $60,000, forget even talking baseball money or NIL stuff. So you're right. The great and I get it. The same as you. I wasn't locked in at that age on academics, but I think
Mhm.
advice of hey, hit the books, hit the weight room is really good advice if you want to play college baseball.
Yeah, and I think to wrap all that up, Wayne, it's like don't get caught up in what is going around you as a high school kid through the recruiting process. Just work on getting better. Don't get because I think it's so hard to do that now with
It
social
is.
media and comparing yourself. Comparison's the thief of joy. Like just work on getting better every single day. You look at the two Cy Young winners. I think that's gone viral. Is
Yes.
Paul Skeens had two offers, and Scooble had one, or it might have been vice versa, but
Yep.
two best pitchers in the game. So it's like just keep on getting better. And that's all. Get your head down. Don't worry about, you know, if these offers aren't coming or whatever it might be. Just keep on working, plugging away. But I think taking care of your academics is going to put you in a good spot so you can continue to do that.
Yeah, you're right. And you're right. It's hard because it's in their face, but that is great advice. And I love that quote. comparison is the thief of joy, which it actually very much is. Talk about a
Mhm.
life lesson right there. That's a heck of a one. Comparison is the thief of joy. But Ty, you're the man. I appreciate, and I'm sure it's always busy over at Vandy Baseball. I know you guys got a Vandy Fest coming up. I saw that online, which looks like a pretty, it looks like it'll be pretty awesome. But I
Oh yeah.
appreciate you so much hanging out and sharing your knowledge, and I'm excited for you being there. And curious to see some years down the road where my man Ty goes coaching wise. But I know right now you're just going one day at a time, being the best coach you can. So I appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for spending time with me.
You got it, buddy. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Game Plan podcast by College Baseball Advisors. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Ty Blankmeyer, assistant coach at Vanderbilt. I'd like to remind you that this podcast is made possible through the generous sponsorship of the World Baseball Coaches Convention, which is in its 23rd year, taking place at the Mohegan Sun Casino. This year is January 15th to 17th, 2026. This is an event I've been to 20 plus times. It's great to listen, to talk to like-minded baseball people, to see the vendors, to see this great venue. There's a cage demo, there's an infield demo, there's breakout rooms. It's just a really neat event. For more information, to see the list of speakers, the schedule, past information, please visit baseballcoachesclinic.com. And thanks again for listening to this episode. Our next recording will be next week with Tad Skelly, the head baseball coach at Vassar College. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you so much.